As sports history fans, we often reminisce about the legends. Willis Reed limping onto the NBA Finals court, Kurt Schilling's bloody sock, Kerry Strug's courageous dismount, and so many more. These moments often define sports history. But what about the countless injuries that did not become legends, or careers that were derailed due to inadequate care? That's where this episode's sponsor comes in. Introducing to you, ILP Sports Consultants, your trusted sports injury partner, available 24/7. Brian Maelli at ILP Sports Consultants has over 20 years of experience in the orthopedic and sports medicine industry, and he has worked with athletes across the gamut, from youth to amateurs, professionals, in almost every sport played in the United States of America, accommodating athletes at every stage of their career. This adaptability ensures that ILP services are perfectly tailored to your skill level, no matter where you are in your athletic journey. With ILP, you are in control. Choose the steps that matter most to you. Diagnosis, treatment plan, recovery, or the whole journey. ILP services are tailored to your unique needs. Rushing for care is a common pitfall, leading to future problems. ILP Sports Consultants helps you make the right decisions, ensuring that you receive timely and safe care. And here's a bonus. Brian hosts the Injured List podcast, sharing insights and athlete stories you won't want to miss. Whether you're a concerned parent or grandparent, or an athlete yourself seeking guidance, ILP Sports Consultants is your beacon of hope in sports injury management. Visit ilpsports.com today. That's the letters ilpsports.com. ILP Sports Consultants, where your well-being is the priority and your recovery is the mission. Choose ILP Sports Consultants for a healthier sports journey, helping you get back in the game the smart way.
Blog Talk Radio.
Tonight we'll go back in time to seasons past, when 22 men graced the rugged fields of yesterday, fighting for one more first down, one more yard gain, one final score which would bring victory after 60 minutes of battle on the gridiron. Tonight we'll explore the world of Gridiron Greats. Welcome to Gridiron Greats, football history memorabilia on the Gridiron Greats Publishing and Broadcasting Network, in conjunction with Swick Enterprises, and we're live from the Wallingford, Connecticut home of Gridiron Greats magazine. I'm Bob Swick, publisher and editor of Gridiron Greats magazine, and I'll be your host for the show. Gridiron Greats is the only publication in America which focuses upon the history and memorabilia of the North American football game since its inception in 1869. We cover 150 plus years of football history and memorabilia. You can find us on the web at gridirongreatsmagazine.com. It is at this time I'd like to introduce my co-host. He is a senior contributing writer to Gridiron Greats magazine, a football memorabilia historian specializing in pre-World War II items, in particular Red Grange, and also Seattle Seahawk items, in particular Steve Larkin. He hails from Portland, Oregon, Mr. Joe Squires. Joe, welcome to the show this evening.
Captain, so good to be here, talking football with you a couple days in a row. Got the dream job, my friend, dream job.
Welcome to another edition, our 102nd podcast that we have, and we're going to lead off tonight before our special guest will be coming on. We're going to talk a little bit about the football playoffs that have passed and are upcoming, and I will go on a limb and make a Super Bowl prediction. So we'll lead off by anyone who knows both of us know that we root for different teams. One nestled in the frozen tundra of the Midwest, upper Midwest, in a town that is so unique to the National Football League. It's incredible. It still exists to this day. A town that I know well, and going to several games over the years, I must admit and I must say, if you have never been to Green Bay, Wisconsin, to Lambeau Field to see a football game, you don't know what you're missing. It should be on every bucket list of any football fan in the country. And the Green Bay
Bob,
Packers.
hearing you say that is like a NFL film's preamble. Just the way you're saying that, I could just see the video rolling and the steam coming off the field as the camera pans Lambeau. Just literally, it's like I'm watching a Steve Sable NFL film. Hearing you go into Lambeau like that. I love it. Keep on trucking, brother. I'm sorry, I just had to chuckle.
And you'll see the ghost of Vince Lombardi on the Green Bay Packers sideline as you stare upwards and see the names Bart Starr, Vince Lombardi, and more. But in any event, last weekend here at the compound, I watched 4 football games from start to finish. I barely moved from my recliner. Brenda had to check to see if I was still alive a few times during the day until she came down and sat for what is the official ceremony of watching a Green Bay Packer game on TV here at the compound from start to finish. And that game, as we all know, was against my co-host's favorite team, the Seattle Seahawks, led by Coach Pete Carroll. And whatever gum he chews, I hope he's sponsoring it. I hope he's got a couple commercials on it, because I never saw a guy near my age chew gum like that. I'm surprised his teeth hold out that long for that 4-hour chew that he does. But in any event, it was a good game. There were very good games last weekend. I enjoyed watching them all. Very interesting.
Bob, I'm not kidding you. I have tears coming out of rolling down my eye. It's just, you are in rare form today, Captain. I'm loving it. Then we all make fun of Pete Carroll and his gum smacking. Trust me. And it goes so fast. It's just he's machine gunning some bubble gum. I wonder how many packs he goes through a game. I wonder if he chews gum when he's away from the field, or if that's just a football field.
I wonder.
I've seen him do press conferences.
I wonder if he has dentures now. I don't know. Maybe that's why he's chewing the way he's chewing. I have no clue. I mean, even Brenda said while she's watching, she said, "What is he chewing?" I said, "It's got to be gum. It's not tobacco." I mean, if he was chewing tobacco, he'd have a jaw on. And I said, "I don't think any of them draw tobacco anymore on the sidelines like they used to." But man, oh man,
Bob,
he just chews gum.
I really enjoyed all the texting back and forth. We had back and forth with you, me, and all of our football buddies, where it's just, just all Bob, for our listeners, all Bob says, all pregame, all week, Green Bay all the way, Green Bay all the way. You just may as well have a T-shirt made for Bob, or a hat that he just points to. It says Green Bay all the way. So I was coming up with, Seahawks win the day. I was coming up with all funny things, and then the game started, and Seattle didn't do a very good job starting off, and then they made it a game towards the end. It came close.
But not close enough. Remember.
But not close enough.
Remember.
A W is a W. There's no asterisks. Yep.
Winning
exactly.
isn't everything. It's the only thing. Yeah, they made a game in the second half, which was good. And I could tell Rodgers was getting tired. Rodgers is a step off of his game. I don't care what anybody says. And again, he's working with a lot of different receivers, and you don't mess up. You don't want to mess up a pattern with Aaron Rodgers as your quarterback, because that's pretty bad as far as I'm concerned. It's
all timing.
You're told what the play is. You got to execute it. You got to fight your defender, and you must execute, and you must catch the ball. And as the years have gone on with Rodgers, you got to be there. You turn around, the ball's going to be in your hand.
That amount of time. Yep, exactly. I wanted to go back to 2 weeks prior.
Okay.
You and I we've talked about it. Somehow a lot of things can come down to one play in one game, and they can have entire season implications. And I want to go back to the last game of the NFL season. And it was a Sunday night football game, San Francisco 49ers at Seattle.
Right.
Last game. Both teams came into it, San Francisco came into it 12-3, and Seattle 11-4.
Right.
Seattle had beat San Francisco in San Francisco, so if Seattle wins, they win the division. And not only do they win the division, but they would likely become, because of other people's records that week that are already in the books, they would become the number 3 seed. San Francisco wins, and they became the number 1 seed with a with the 13-3 record, because they'd beat the Saints. So San Francisco, and it came down to that last drive with 2 minutes left. Seattle was trailing by, I think it was 5. They made it all the way down. It was fourth and 10 from the 11 or 12-yard line. Seattle made a first down, 1st and goal on the 1 with like 40 seconds to go. They ran up and spiked the ball. They started to trot out Marshawn Lynch, and everybody's celebrating. 2nd and goal on the 1 with, 35 seconds to go. The clock stopped. Everybody's high-fiving. They line up, and a delay of game happens. A delay of game on 2nd and goal on the 1-yard line. 2nd and goal on the 1 is a lot different than 2nd and goal on the 6. Marshawn Lynch trots off an incomplete pass. 4th and goal on the 6. Seattle throws a slant across the middle to their fullback. He barely gets stopped on the 1 foot line. Change of downs. San Francisco wins. 1 play, 1 game is the difference between Seattle being the number 3 seed and where they ended up. At the end.
And I don't care what anybody says. That delay of game never should have happened in your 16th game of the season when you're playing for everything on the line. That should never, ever have happened. That's something. That's a mistake you make in junior college football, not in the NFL in your 16th game of the season when you're fighting for, a number 3 playoff berth. I mean, to me, it was ridiculous. I couldn't believe what I saw. I really couldn't.
Very.
It was amazing.
Very. I mean, that's bad coaching. That's on Pete Carroll. A delay of game penalty. So here's the ripple effect from that. Seattle drops to number 5 instead of becoming the number 3 seed, and with San Francisco becoming the number 1 seed, the Saints drop to being the number 3 seed. If San Francisco loses that game, the Saints are the number 2 seed with a first week bye. But because San Francisco wins that game and becomes the number 1 seed, Saints become number 3 seed. They end up playing the Vikings at home and lose. San Francisco loses that game in Seattle. Saints are the number 2 seed with a first week bye, and who knows? Maybe they go up. I always had I always had the Saints winning the NFC this year. They were that good. So a huge ripple effect. Not only for the Seahawks and where they stand, for the 49ers and where the Saints ended up being being placed. It was kind of interesting, and it's truly amazing, and
again, I tell a lot of people here locally, because they ask me, they know I eat, sleep, drink Green Bay. They know I got a lot of contacts there, so on and so forth. And I just tell them, you have to execute every game in an NFL season like you're playing the Super Bowl. And I said, you take what I'm saying at face value. You're a professional football player. I don't buy into the argument in a 16-game season, well, we're definitely always going to lose X amount of games. Listen, you got to go out there and you got to play like every game is a Super Bowl. I don't care what anybody says. And you got to try to win, and you got to achieve whatever it is that your opponent is putting in front of you to get by and score that touchdown or get that field goal, whatever the case may be. And there's no room for excuses. And unfortunately, because we got talking media 24/7, all the sports talk shows, they got to talk about something. So they rehash everything 200,000 times over and over again. Well, I'll cut through the rhetoric. If you don't execute, you're going to lose the game. It's simple. If you're going to execute, you got a shot at winning. If you're going to execute perfectly, you're going to be a champion. And that's what it comes down to. That's really what it comes down to. And I do feel sorry for the fans of NFL teams that are horrible, And every season it's the same problem, same issues, so on and so forth. Green Bay went through that for how many years? I call it the dark ages of the Packers, where they couldn't do anything.
Yep.
Yeah. And it's just can't happen. So that's why I always say Green Bay all the way. And a real quick story: back in the '90s, I worked for the local phone company here in Connecticut, and I worked in the real estate division. So the guys there were very sports minded. So there was a football pool every season. So the first year I worked there, they said, "You want to join the football pool?" I said, "Sure." So every week you had your picks. You had to pick all the games, so on and so forth. So at the end of the season, one of the guys who ran the pool, one of the managers, said to me, "You never bet against Green Bay the whole season." I said, "I don't bet against Green Bay." So summarizing it, I ended up second in the pool somehow. And he just said, you picked Green Bay every week of this season, and I can't believe you're in second place. I said, well, believe it. I don't bet against Green Bay, which is why I say this year, my prediction, Sunday's game against the 49ers will be difficult to a certain degree. But I do believe the Packers will beat the 49ers in San Francisco. And I also believe they will be in the Super Bowl. I do believe their opponent, contrary to what a lot of people think, will be the Kansas City Chiefs. And I believe we're going to see a replay of the Super Bowl many years ago with the Kansas City Chiefs and the Green Bay Packers. And the Packers will once again overcome and be Super Bowl champions again, showing Aaron Rodgers, and here's the storyline, Aaron Rodgers and a first-year coach, a young first-year coach, wins a Super Bowl. I could be wrong, but more times I'm right. So we'll see how it plays out.
We haven't even touched on the Tennessee Titans. A 9-7 Tennessee Titans with the worst record in either conference. Barely making it to the playoffs, barely.
Right.
At 9-7, and then nudging off 12-4 Patriots at home, and then moving on to the number 1 Ravens with the best overall record in the NFL, 14-2. So the number 6, 9-7 lost.
I really don't understand what happened to Baltimore in that game. I don't know how they could have been that unprepared for what they were up against. I don't know what kind of film they looked at. I don't know what kind of game plan they had. But to me, they looked horrible. They really looked horrible.
Yep.
And it was really pathetic to watch. Pathetic.
Yeah.
And
well, as you said in a text message, that's why we play the game.
Yep. Exactly. And to me, Henry, as a running back, I mean, the guy's a bull. He's literally unstoppable. But again, I'm going to compare Sunday's game with the Chiefs, down 24-0 by the Texans, and the Texans making some questionable coaching moves, in my opinion, that basically dissolved their entire lead and their game victory. You know, they became a listless team, and Kansas City just poured it on. I mean, they got 82 points in that game. That's amazing for a playoff game to see that many points. So that's why I think Tennessee might have some problems on Sunday. I think the Chiefs are going to be prepared. I think they watching enough film off of what the Patriots didn't do and what Baltimore didn't do, they'll prepare themselves to know. And Andy Reid's smart that way. He understands. Yeah. He's got a good handle on his opponents. So I think his game plan can be really catered to what Tennessee's going to throw at him. But I do agree with that. Number 6 spot that just got red hot. That was basically 2 games over 500. Wow. I mean, that's scary to see. That's scary to see, to say the least. So
the only shame is that the U of O, the University of Oregon's Heisman winner Marcus Mariota, who's I'm a huge fan of. I have a Sports Illustrated blown up poster of him autographed hanging in my office. That Marcus Mariota was benched early on in the season. That's the only shame, is that he's carrying a clipboard for Tannehill and the Titans. But
right.
Oh well.
Right. Well, that happens. And again, if you want to be a number 2 quarterback in the NFL, there's only 32 spots. Number 1 and number 2, you better be prepared. If your quarterback goes down, you better get out there and you better play your A game. Don't be rusty. Don't be confused. Don't look at the sidelines trying to figure out what the play is. You got to respond. That's it. And I think that's the big difference today between number 2 quarterbacks in the NFL as compared to the 60s. When you had an Earl Morrall walk on the field and that was it, or Zeke Bratkowski walking on for star or whatever. They were there. They came out and that was it. They do what they have to do. They have to play. So different league, different.
Garoppolo holding a clipboard for Tom Brady all those years. Now he's, number 1 seed in the NFC. And then here's Tannehill comes to, but Marcus Mariota was the number 1 draft for the Titans, and he's their franchise quarterback. And 3 years later, Tannehill's their backup, and he takes his job. I mean, it's you got to be on.
Yeah, you got to be definitely spot on, to say the least. So it'll be interesting to see how it plays out. And I do have to say it was very enjoyable to watch uninterrupted all 4 games, especially the last game on a Sunday night. And mercifully, it got done whatever time it was, a little after 10 o'clock. I hate those Sunday night games that end at 11:30 at night. And I'm up at 5 o'clock the next morning, so it's a rough next day. All right.
They're perfectly timed for us West Coast guys.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Our special guest is here. I'd like to introduce him and start our show. I'd like to welcome him. He is a New York Football Giants collector and New York Football Giants historian with an impressive collection of Giant programs and other memorabilia. I'd like to introduce to the show tonight Mr. Larry Schmidt. Larry, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me. How you doing?
Good. I'm good. I didn't realize we're neighbors. I forgot all about that.
Yeah, Connecticut's not a large state. You're about an hour and a half drive from somebody.
Exactly. Yeah, I'm about an hour from you if there's no traffic. Very interesting. Now, let's start off by asking and telling our audience, how'd you become a fan of the New York Football Giants?
Well, I grew up in a family with season tickets for the Giants. My grandfather first got them when they were playing in the old Yankee Stadium going back to 1960 or 1961. I don't know the exact year. And my grandfather passed the tickets on to my father, and I grew up going to games at Giant Stadium in the Meadowlands with my father and my 2 sisters. And he passed them on to us, and my sisters and I held on to the season tickets up through 2009, which was their last year at Giant Stadium. We didn't make the move to MetLife with the team.
Yeah, a lot of people did not buy into the seat licensing.
No, that was they made the decision easier than it needed to be.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly.
Same thing happened here in Seattle, Larry. They blew up the Kingdom and they built the new stadium. The new Qualcomm Stadium and it was Qualcomm. Now it's CenturyLink. Excuse me. And when they did that, we had to sit on the bleachers at Husky Stadium, University of Washington, for 2 years. And then once the stadium was built, licensing fees, the price doubled. I mean, there wasn't much loyalty.
Yeah, mine more than doubled.
Yeah. But it just became easier to, having to deal with the preseason tickets, and not going to every game. Yeah, now I just buy 1 or 2 games and decide what to go to. Yeah, I hear you. Same thing.
Yep. Yeah, I miss Giants games, but I still get my live football fix. I go to West Point to see Army play once a year, and Mikey Stadium's a great place to watch football. A lot of fun tailgating there.
Yeah.
And it's very very fan-friendly with the prices.
That's an incredible place to go see a football game, and I would recommend anybody put Army on West Point for on your bucket list to see a game there. You will not be disappointed.
Absolutely.
I saw Air Force and Army a few years back. I went on a bus trip from here, and what an incredible experience! Incredible. I mean, it gives you goosebumps just to see walking into that stadium and then seeing all the young military men and women in their uniform cheering on nonstop for 60 minutes. It's just incredible. Incredible.
Yep, and there's a lot of football history there. Vince Lombardi coached there. Bill Parcells coached there. A lot of great players. It's a great place for a football fan.
Yeah.
We had a previous guest on the show, Scotty Otten, who's an officer in the Army, who's talked about getting some backstage passes to an Army game, and I've planted the flag. If he flies back, to West Point and can get me into a game, I'm flying there to go see an Army game.
It's worth it. Right. It's worth it. Go do it.
Yeah. All right. Big Blue Interactive. You're obviously, tell our audience a little bit about it, and the articles on it. You're the site's historian, correct?
Yes. Yeah. So Big Blue Interactive is a fan site and a message board that's been around since 1995, and I've been a visitor and a poster on the message board since 1996. And about 6 or 7 years ago, I was talking to Eric Kennedy, who runs the site, and I started to write some articles on Giants history. I started with the 1934 championship and 1938, and as I started writing, and this was as I started building my library of old out-of-print football history books, as I'm writing an article, all these other ideas started coming to me. And as I'm writing about the 1938 Giants, I'm thinking about Paul Brown. And as I start writing about Paul Brown, I start thinking about Y.A. Tittle, and it was this huge, burst of ideas that I've had for a long time that just started coming out, and I was just cranking them out one after the other. And as I was having exchanges with Eric Kennedy, he said, I want to make you the website's historian, so I'm on the About Us section of the website. And, I haven't written a formal article in a little while because I've been busy doing other things, but occasionally I'll write, a detailed post in the forum, and it'll be based around pictures or newspaper articles that I found. And it's mostly focused on Giants history, but I try to be broad and, include other aspects of, pro football history, rules changes, other players from other teams and styles of play. And, it's just something that I do because I love, and I'm just I'm happy that there's an audience for it and people want to read about it and they want to learn about history too.
You're doing amazing. I always tip my hat to somebody who picks up the baton of a team's history and runs with it.
Mm-hmm.
To just catalog it, to share with others. So
yeah.
Somebody has to do it, and I'm always very appreciative of the person or people who do it. So nice job.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, the one thing that's always kind of frustrated me, and I have pretty much every book that's been written on the Giants, and sometimes the NFL Films features. It seems like everybody thinks the Giants' history started in the 1950s with Frank Gifford and Sam Huff, but there's a whole generation of football that took place before that.
Yep.
If you asked any Giant fan, what they know about Mel Hine, and they might say, "Oh yeah, well he was a great center," just because that's all they've ever seen, and he was a lot more than that. He was a fantastic defensive player. Wellington Maris said that Mel Hine was the greatest Giant, and the only one that ever equaled him was Lawrence Taylor. And a lot of people just aren't aware of that because there's just not a lot of film out there. There's some, 1 minute or 90-second newsreel highlights of like a game against the Packers that exists, but there's just not a whole lot. And, football history is different than baseball history, where there's not a ton of information before the 1950s about it. So you really have to want to drill deep. And, I've been getting my information the past 5 or 6 years from going into old newspaper archives online, like the New York Times and the New York Herald Tribune and the Chicago Tribune and the Green Bay newspapers. You really have to want to go get it.
Yeah. And I hate to say it, Larry, I think the NFL is in that camp where, NFL history starts, Super Bowl I. I mean, they really struggle. They really struggle to acknowledge the past.
I agree with you. They'll mention the Packers of the '60s and the greatest game ever played in '58, but before that, it's like nothing ever happened. It was a Neanderthal game played by guys with leather helmets, but it was really interesting, and there was so much innovation that took place in the 30s and the 40s. The T formation, and it's the umbrella defense and Sammy Baugh.
Look where we're at. It's the 100th anniversary of the NFL. You'd expect them to. You'd expect them to put something together celebrating 100 years. I mean, this is the year they should have really celebrated.
I know it's been very low key. It was, it seemed like they made a bigger deal of it in 1994 with the 75th anniversary.
Yeah.
Well, I think what they're doing, they're catering to their market right now. Number one, but number two, I've always felt the NFL has always rejected any of the different leagues that have occurred over the years, including the real old AFLs, the AAFC, obviously the AFL, obviously WFL and the USFL, and they just basically literally just wiped them off the books and that they never existed. And again, instead of understanding and incorporating it in their history, they reject it from a pure marketing point of view, and it really makes no sense to me whatsoever. And especially with the American Football League, and I don't use Super Bowl I use 1970 as they really believe that's the beginning of the NFL because the AFL was gone and they're merged. They're one league, and that's it. Everything is wonderful now, type of thing. Yep. So I agree. I agree with both of you guys with regards to the irrational and really poor development of the 100th anniversary of the NFL. Nothing makes sense to me this year whatsoever. I try to be optimistic about it, and then listening to the Hall of Famers today who got picked, I'm saying to myself, I don't get it. I'm better off just not saying anything, type of thing. Quick side note to what you were talking about the Giants. I was an usher at the Yale Bowl with my brother-in-law back in the 70s for the 2 seasons that they played there. And we always commented that Giant fans coming out of New York were cheap because they would never tip us when we brought them to their seats. So by the end of the season, we just basically I was whatever, I think I was like 15, 16 years old at the time. We would just point where their seats were instead of walking them. And, I had my little towel, so I would wipe the bench down for them to sit. I really, we would laugh about it because nobody gave us a tip. So it was at
you
the end
can't blame me. I wasn't one of
year.
them. That was a little bit.
Well,
I was still a little bit young. I wasn't going to games yet.
But I'm just throwing it out.
If you can,
it was just hysterical to watch. That we're saying, well, what, okay, there's your seats, and walk up 6 rows. You're in the middle there. That's it. So, that's funny.
I have a hard time envisioning a young 15-year-old, obviously mustachioed, Bob Swick, getting stiffed for a tip, for walking him down, wiping the rain off. Come on, Newts. One more reason not to like New York Giant fans.
Hey, present company excluded, right?
Exactly. Now there's another friend of the program, the Reverend Michael Moran. We just call him Rev. His father, Hap Moran, played for the Giants in the 20s and 30s, and
yes, Mike actually is my neighbor. He's a fellow New Milford resident.
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure Mike would agree with you that the Giants' history started before '58 in the Great Escape.
Yes, we've had many discussions over it, and he's helped me out a bit with my articles. He gives me good insights, and he gives me, my articles have photographs with them, and he's been kind enough to scan from his personal collections just some really beautiful high def photos. So a lot of what you see on Big Blue Interactive, it says courtesy of Reverend Mike Moran on there. And he's helped me out. Hooked me up with some nice programs too.
We're constantly saying the rest of us are students of NFL history.
That's right.
Rev, he is NFL history.
He is
NFL history.
As closely tied to it as anybody I've ever met.
Larry, you're also the assistant researcher for the Gridiron Uniform Database. What's that entail?
So, the Gridiron Uniform Database, its 9th anniversary is coming up. I believe it's in June, and it's a graphic website where we are attempting to visually depict every uniform ever worn, going all the way back to the APFA in 1920. And I started out just as a fan of the site, and I was a visitor. And the best thing about the Gridiron Uniform Database is that we encourage visitor participation. If you know something, if you have a photograph, share it with us. There's a forum on there for people to post, anything and everything that they think is interesting. And that's how I started, just making posts. And about a year or two into it, they decided they should just put me to work. So during the off season, we work on the bigger historical projects. And then during the season, it's just, keeping up with the current goings on. And that's where I got, most of my access for newspaper databases, was doing the photography research, because there's only so much you're going to find on Google Images and Getty Images. And it's going into the newspapers because going back to the 1930s and 1920s, that's where you're going to find most of them. And they're also the most accurate, because a lot of the photographs that you see on Associated Press or Getty, they're misdated. But the newspapers are the most accurate because they were, the photograph was taken the day before, and it's in there with the game story. So it's just, I love like anything else about football history, it's, you have to want to get it. You have to be willing to drill down, and it's just something that we do because we love it.
I love the Gridiron Uniform Database website. It's I was on it last night, as a matter of fact, Larry. It's looking up some uniform history. And before you were on the show, I actually didn't know you were associated with it. So again, thank you for keeping up with that, because it's odd. If you want to know what a uniform looked like or what color it was, you're Googling it and you're trying to narrow it down. It took forever, and you guys just make it simple.
Yeah, so everything that you see displayed on there has at least one photograph backing it up. When you get to the 1920s, you'll see a blank template because we just don't have anything to support it. But a few years ago, we began doing every weekly matchup. And we have, for the NFL, I think the weeklies, we have every single weekly going back, I believe, to 1948. And when we get to the middle 40s, like around the AAFC, There's a couple that are missing, and then as you go further back to the 40s, because, the photographs just become harder and harder to find. But right now we have it set up where we have almost everything week to week going back to 1930. And I believe the preseasons we have going back to 1950. And this past summer, Bill Schaefer and I were working on trying to find photographs of the NFL games against independent teams, which they did a lot of in the early and the mid-40s, like during World War II. They were playing a lot of the military teams, or they would play, the Giants would play I think it was the Patterson Panthers. So we tried to find as many of those as we could for the preseason.
Wow, that's amazing.
Whatever it is, it takes a lot of work, a lot of personal time. And,
yep. There is no off season at the Gridiron Uniform Database.
Yeah.
In fact, the off season for for Bill and I, that's actually our busy time.
Interesting. You mentioned you have a really large collection of programs. Do you just collect New York Giants programs, or a whole bunch of them, and then rattle off what a couple of your favorite programs are.
Yeah, so it's mostly Giants. I have my favorites are usually the oldest ones. I have my earliest one was the Giants and the Bears from November 1934. Ken Strong is on the cover. And that was the season. Yeah, that was the season they ended up playing the Bears in the sneakers game.
Championship.
That's these old programs. Aside from the historical relevance, they have nice. There's a good photograph of Red Grange in that one. I have the season finale games. The Giants played against the Redskins at the Polo Grounds in 1938 and 39. Those were two games that the Giants needed to win to get into the championship game. And the 1939 game is one of the it's kind of an infamous one because the Redskins had attempted a field goal at the very end, and they called it no good, but the Redskins thought it was good, and there was almost a riot on the field. And I have my number one favorite is from 1940, the Giants and the Dodgers, Mel Hein Day. So almost the whole program is dedicated to Mel Hein. Yeah. And there's a nice two-page spread where there's, comments from Bert Bell and George Halas and a whole bunch of NFL people, talking about Mel Hein. That's a really good one. I have Tuffy Lehman's Day. Tuffy Lehman's Day, December 7th, 1941. Just for the date on the cover, that's a good one. And, some of my favorites, I have a few from the 1950s. I mentioned Paul Brown earlier. Through the 1950s, I'm trying to add to my collection of Giants-Browns programs. I have the one from the Polo Grounds in 1950. I have them. My newest ones I just got for Christmas. 1958, the Giants played the Browns on consecutive weeks at Yankee Stadium. On December 14th. December 14th was the game where Pat Summerall kicked the field goal in the snow to force the playoff. And then the week after was the Eastern Conference playoff where the Giants played the Browns and the Giants shut the Browns out, and that sent the Giants into the championship game against the Colts.
Right.
So I enjoy them for historical significance, but I just love reading them for fun. It's just something that I enjoy doing.
It is. Do you have a program from that 58 championship, greatest game?
I don't have that one. It's a little out of my price range. They're really, the ones like that, I'm a little bit more modest. But, who knows, one day down the road, maybe I can work something out.
I saw a scan of it once, and it's kind of cool because they show the Giants team, and there's very young Vince Lombardi there. There's a Landry. That is a staff akin to Bill Walsh, 49ers, in the 80s, the coaches he spun on.
I have the Giants media guide for 1954, which was the first year with Jim Lee Howell and Vince Lombardi and Tom Landry, and I have it right in front of me, right there on page 5. There's the picture of the coaching staff, and there's 2 pages just talking about all the credentials that all the new coaches have, because at the time that was kind of a big deal because Steve Owen had coached the Giant team for 23 years, and Giant fans hadn't been exposed to, they all grew up with, Steve Owen is the Giants, so they had all these new faces. So that's one of my favorite programs too, or that's a media guide.
Very cool.
Now you have some autographs too. Can you tell us about those?
Sure. I have my first autograph when I started. It was in the late 1990s. I got my first autograph on eBay. It was a photograph of Harry Carson playing in Super Bowl 21. So I spent a couple of years, looking for photographs that were autographed. Phil Simms and Joe Morris and a lot of the 80s Giants that I loved, and then some of the contemporary ones at the time. I have Jesse Armstead and Michael Strahan, and from the photographs, I started getting into a little bit of a mini helmet collection. I have Simms and Taylor, and my favorite one, it's a throwback helmet. It's a autographed by 4 Giants Hall of Famers: Y.A. Tittle, Frank Gifford, Sam Huff, and Roosevelt Brown. That's my favorite mini helmet.
Well, have you ever had those autographs authenticated, or are you ever worried about?
Yeah, no. Everyone that I bid on, I always made sure had a C of A available with it.
It's kind of interesting, like Harry Carson, overlooked, player for sure. But it's kind of interesting. Like, I'm very familiar with, my childhood hero, Steve Largent's signature. And you can kind of look at something signed, you're like, that doesn't look right, So either was the 200th thing he had to sign in a row and he was getting a little tired, or, it's a fake.
His hand started cramping a little bit.
Yeah, no kidding. But, yeah, it's interesting how you begin to recognize, the autographs you're an expert at. And,
That's very common, though, when they're signing a bunch of stuff all at once. If you see their signature at the beginning of the session until the end of the session, there is a noticeable difference, especially with the older players. Younger guys, obviously they got more handle on it, but at the same time, most of their autographs are not legible when you're reading it. At least the older guys took the time out to, actually sign their name so you could read what their name was, type of thing. I've seen some stuff today from some modern-day players. Doesn't even I couldn't figure out who the heck it is. I have no idea who it is. So
I went to a Giants fan event in 1999 when Lawrence Taylor went into the Hall of Fame, and they had a table set up for autographs. Everybody got to bring up one item to be signed, and I have an authentic jersey that I got when I was in high school. That was number 56 that I wanted him to autograph, and I bought a picture of him at the podium to have signed that my wife stood in line to get. And we had to stand in line for LT's signature. I'm not, 20, 25 minutes, because it was just a mob scene. He was like a rock star, and it was just, you had to stick your hand up, and there's, everybody's reaching something to him, and he would just take it, sign it, and he, could barely even look up and make eye contact. But then to the table just to the left, there were these 2 guys, and I look, and it was Harry Carson and George Martin, and I just walked over, and I said hello. I shook their hands, and they chatted with me a little bit. They were just super friendly guys, and at one point, Harry Carson just kind of looked over toward LT, and he just kind of shook his head, because it was just such a he was like a rock star, and half the people there, I don't even think knew who Harry Carson or George Martin were.
Oh, my God.
Yeah, but I did right away, and I got to, Yeah, so those are the items that I had signed in person.
The 1980 football set is one of my favorites. The Harry Carson card in there is one of my favorites. I just dig that card. So that must be a pride hit to be a pro football. And like I said before, Harry Carson is no slouch.
Oh no,
he's a good player. And to be sitting there alone while, the line is, 20 minutes deep for LT, it's got to be a tad bit pride-swallowing.
A little bit. But I also think they kind of were enjoying the anonymity a little bit, too. I don't think they wanted to be that famous. It would be a little overwhelming.
Larry, do you remember when Beasley Reese was on Channel 30? He was the sports announcer. This was quite a few years back. And I remember he would do promotions for WVIT at the time, and then he would sign. Real nice guy to talk to in person, and it was very pleasant on the air. So I remember him. That just popped in my mind when you were talking about roughly that time period.
Yeah. Yeah, I know he ended up, I think, doing television in Philadelphia for a while.
Yeah.
It was kind of weird, a Giant in Eagles country.
Yeah. He was
we
in Hartford.
One behind the enemy line.
Yeah. He lived near one of my friends, and he always told me that he was a real nice guy to talk to. Went out of his way to say hi to everybody. Very, very pleasant.
Yeah, Larry, you also mentioned previously you had a media guide in front of you. I mean, is that something you collect? Is that
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, I have a bunch. I don't know the exact count. I have, starting from 2005 to 1971, I have just about all of them. I'm missing a couple in the 90s. And then I have 3 or 4 from the 60s. I have 4 or 5 from the 50s. And my earliest one is 1946. And, they're invaluable when it comes to research. Because, there's so many websites. There's Pro Football Reference and the Pro Football Archives where you can get yardage statistics and numbers. But the media guides and game programs, they have anecdotes and little factoids about players or coaches that you just can't get anywhere else.
Totally.
I've always said they're just
fun to read, and that.
Yeah,
the advertisements in some of them are a kick.
Are so overlooked to collectors for some reason.
Yeah.
I never could understand that. Anybody,
they are.
Say you're a Giants fan. To me, it's at least own like one from each decade is something better than nothing. But the way they're ignored by so many collectors, it never made sense to me. It really doesn't.
Yeah, sometimes like on eBay, you can find someone selling 4 or 5 for a decent price.
Yeah.
Which is how I've gotten some of mine. That's how I got my my collection from the 80s. I got a whole bunch in one shot, and it's a bargain. And it was like $100 for 10, but that's $10 each, and that's a bargain.
Right.
And I use them for when I write my articles, and I'm not embarrassed to say I just kind of like to read them for fun sometimes too.
I was just going to say it's got to be really cool to reread those, like you mentioned earlier. I mean, I live in Portland, Oregon, and I bought an old program from the Portland Rockets, like 1933 or something like that.
Nice.
Playing a game, and I read every single article. I looked at every ad because it was kind of cool to see like a suit manufacturer in Southwest Portland. It was really cool to read, and I about every other year I break it out and reread it again.
Yep. Yeah, I do that. The early part of the off season. After the Super Bowl when there's not a lot to do during the winter. That's when I kind of, go to the bookshelf and I look at the programs or I look at the media guides.
Yeah. To me, it's just you're reading history, and especially stuff from before World War II that still is in existence today. To me, is rare, and you're reading the history of the game as it happened. I mean, that's what it really comes down to.
Like Charlie Connerly's second year, the Giants hired Allie Sherman to be their T formation expert because the Giants were trying to transition from the A formation and the single wing to the T formation, and they brought in a special coach for that. And it ended up taking them until Jim Lee Howell and Vince Lombardi took over, where it finally happened for good. But the Giants kept toggling back and forth between A formation and T formation, and a couple of times they actually drafted a quarterback just to play the T, and they'd switch, Connerly or someone like Travis Tidwell, whether they wanted to play the T formation or the A formation for a particular game. Or sometimes during a game, they would play a half. One half Connerly would play from the A formation, and then the second half the other quarterback would play for the T formation. And that's stuff that you find in newspapers.
Exactly.
Wow.
It's amazing information, and to me, it's just so overlooked. Paper, media guides, programs, yearbooks, the annuals, the Illustrated and Smith, the Illustrated Football annuals, all that
they're time
stuff.
capsules.
Yeah, exactly. I'm just so surprised it's just not as popular. I know in other sports, I know in baseball it's very popular, but in football, for whatever reason.
I know. Yeah, the baseball
much,
fan culture is different than football.
Yeah, exactly.
In baseball, history is revered. In football, it's kind of a niche interest.
Yeah,
that's still evolving.
Baseball collectors. Baseball collectors are a totally different breed than than us football collectors. It is interesting,
Yeah.
It's amazing. Hey, Larry, a final question as we're getting close to our ending here. Any advice for beginning collectors?
For me, it was just following my passion. It was something that I enjoyed. I started with just making a purchase on eBay, an autographed picture, and I began filling up a wall with autographed photos, and then it became mini helmets, and then, I really found what I enjoyed, with programs and media guides, and I buy books from used booksellers, and it's just blossomed into this whole other thing where I write articles, I do uniform research, and, from my articles, this past year I was invited to be on the Giants television on their show Giants Chronicles, because they found me because I had written an article about Emlyn Tunnell and Roosevelt Brown, and they were doing a show on Roosevelt Brown this year, and they found the article, and they just asked me to come down. And, just from some very innocent, having fun, getting an autographed picture, over the past 21, 22 years, it's just kind of been a path that I followed, and my collection just kind of, it's like a timeline of my interest over time.
Yeah, it's amazing, an amazing evolution, and your knowledge of the New York Giants is just incredible. It was funny you were saying you got invited to be on the Giants show, and I saw a clip of it. I'm pretty sure John Verparian out of White Plains. He's in the Professional Football Research Association.
Mm-hmm.
He does a lot of baseball stuff. He has that show Beyond the Game that he does for the local public TV. So a couple of weeks ago, I drove down there to do the show. I've done it probably like 4 or 5 times now, and it never ceases to amaze me. Somebody out of the blue watches it, and then I get this inquiry about something that they have or whatever, and it's good. It's a good thing. You're presenting something different, and it's educational at the same time, and people watch that. And that's the nice part about it. At the same time, it's a nice break from the 24/7 media of garbage talking down this guy, that guy, so on and so forth. I mean, we're talking about history, and that's it. So it's great.
Yep.
Well, Larry, thank you for being on. I appreciate it.
Well, thank you for having me. It was a lot of fun. I enjoyed it.
You really informed us a lot about the websites, which I was curious about myself, as far as the Big Blue Interactive. I've been fooling around looking at it, and I said this is a ton of information, and it's great.
Yeah.
And you're doing a service for the history of the game and for the Giants too.
Yeah, it's the oldest Giants fan website out there. It's been going strong. It's 25 years now, 1995.
Yeah. Amazing. All right, thanks for being on.
Thank you for having me, guys.
Thank you, Larry.
Joe, we're almost out of time. We're going to go into a 2-minute wrap-up real quick. Hand it off to you. What did you pick up on tonight's show?
I can't reiterate it enough. I always tip my hat to people who carry the torch of teams. We mentioned Rev, Moran. I mean, obviously Larry. There's certain people who are just, they're living historians for their teams, and I always put things in perspective. I'm a Seahawks fan, but I'm certainly not as up on the history of them as I should be. I probably know more about the Chicago Bears, the Red Grange era, and previous with Hallis and stuff than I do about the Seahawks. So I'm always just appreciative when to talk to people like that, like Larry.
Well, to interject, you know more about Red Grange than I would say many people in my hobby, and you have a true appreciation and understand. No, seriously, of his career, and by far and wide. The strength of that can never be or he's very difficult to duplicate. Whereas with a new team or any team, regular enough team, there are people who are historians, and they're going to dive right into it. New York Giants is a nice team because there's a lot of history to it. It's just not it's not a newer team, number one, and B, there's a lot of history to it. There's a lot of victories. There's a lot of championships. There's a lot going there. So it's very, very interesting to me, and I'm glad to see that the history of them are being preserved very, very well through Larry and through the Reverend and other people involved in it. And in your case, too, with Red Grange. You're preserving the history of Red Grange, which is very, very important. A lot of people don't understand Red Grange. They don't know the context of really what happened in the years that he played and what he actually did for the professional game. So it's, it has to be, the story has to be told. I don't care what anybody says. All right, we're down to about a minute. Joe, final thoughts.
Best seat in the house. There are times where I just sit back and listen. I know I say that all the time, but every time I'm listening to two people, you and another person talk football, I sit back and listen. And sometimes I forget I'm supposed to be part of the conversation.
Yeah, it's fun. You always say you got the best seat in the house, and I got the best business chair here doing this because it's just something that it's a story that needs to be told, and it hasn't been told for such a long time. So I'm so glad we do this podcast and we can, bring forth all this information and ideas and concepts as far as the history of the game, memorabilia of the game, the teams, the players, the collectors. It's what it's all about. All right, we're out of time. Thanks for listening. Check out our website, GridironGreatsMagazine.com. Thanks for listening.
Hey there, sports history fan. This is Arnie Chapman, a.k.a. the Football History Dude, and I wanted to thank you for stopping by to listen to another episode here on the Sports History Network. Our podcasters are passionate about uncovering and sharing sports stories from yesteryear. And if you didn't know it already, we have over 30 shows across the network covering all sorts of sports history topics. In fact, here's a glimpse into one of our awesome podcasts here on the network.
Each week, the official Football Learning Academy podcast will take you deep into the history of pro football through interviews with players, coaches, or administrators in the NFL, as well as interviews with Pro Football Hall of Fame selectors, authors, and historians. You'll learn how the game evolved and important moments that shaped the sport into what it is today. And don't miss the Pro Football History Nugget of the Week. Listen to the official Football Learning Academy podcast on the Sports History Network.
How about that? I bet you're super hyped to go listen to that new podcast, right? Well, to learn about this show and all the other podcasts on the network, head over to sportshistorynetwork.com/podcast. Again, that's sportshistorynetwork.com/podcast. Head over there today to find your next favorite sports history podcast.